elders have a name for the sickness. The static. It is a quiet plague. It comes not with a fever or a cough, but with a slow, creeping silence. It eats the names of your children, the face of your lover, the warmth of your fondest memories, leaving behind only a hollow, buzzing void. My people are fading, becoming ghosts in their own skin. The last echo hunter of my tribe, a title that feels more like a curse, told me the stories. She spoke of a god in the whispering forest, a place where the trees are made of metal and the air hums with forgotten data, a being who guards the forest's heart, a thing of immense power that could be the cure. My mission was to hunt this god, to steal its heart, and to save my people. I came to this forest with a high-tech bow and a heart full of hate. I did not know that the god I was hunting was a physician, and I did not know that the only way to save my people was to let him reach into my soul and shatter it. My world is one of dirt, leather, and silence. We are the children of the dust, a tribe that lives in the shadow of the great collapse, a time the sky people fell and their metal cities went quiet. We hunt, we gather, we survive, and we remember. Or, we used to. The static began a generation ago, a faint crackle at the edge of our elders' minds. They would forget a word, then a name, then a face. Now, it is an epidemic. My own mother, her eyes a vacant, steel-gray mirror of my own, no longer knows my name. She looks at the ritualistic scar on my cheek, a mark of my coming of age, and feels nothing. The ghost of her memory is gone. The last echo hunter, a woman named Lyra, whose own mind was already beginning to fray, gave me my final lesson before the static took her completely. She passed her title to me, and with it, the legend. She spoke of the whispering forest, a place of bad spirits and twisted metal, a scar on the face of our world, a place no hunter enters. But she also spoke of its heart, a source of immense energy that pulsed with the life of the old world, and she spoke of its guardian, the Wanderer, a silent, faceless god who has walked the forest for 1,000 cycles. The legends say he guards the heart, Lyra had whispered, her voice a dry rasp. But I am an echo. I listen to the whispers of the past. I think he is the heart. Kill him, Rhea. Bring his heart back to us. It is our only chance. And so, I became a hunter of ghosts and gods. My bow is a relic, a piece of sky people tech my ancestors found in a ruin. It fires not arrows, but bolts of focused kinetic energy, silent and deadly. For 3 days, I have been tracking him, following signs that no ordinary hunter would recognize. A set of impossibly long, thin footprints in the damp, metallic soil. A faint trail of corrupted data spores, visible only through the special lens of my hunting mask. A profound, unnatural silence in a forest that should be humming with the sound of its own strange life. The whispering forest is a paradox. It is a place of breathtaking beauty and deep, unsettling melancholy. The trees are not wood, but a dark, twisting metal that seems to flow and change when you are not looking. Their leaves are like black glass, paper-thin solar panels that drink the faint light of our distant sun and emit a soft, internal glow. The air itself is alive, filled with tiny, luminous motes of light that drift on the wind. The elders call them bad spirits. Lyra called them dated, corrupted whispers from the fallen civilization. They phase through you, leaving a faint, tingling sensation and a ghost of a sound in your mind, a fragment of a forgotten song. A single, garbled word in a language no one has spoken for 1,000 years. I found him at the heart of the forest, in a clearing where the metal trees were the oldest and tallest, their glowing leaves forming a cathedral-like canopy. He was not what I expected. The legends painted him as a monster, a terrifying spirit, but he was just still. A tall, slender being, completely shrouded in a tattered, dark cloak. His head bowed. His face was a smooth, featureless, and utterly blank mask of white porcelain. He looked like a traveler who had stopped to rest 1,000 years ago and had simply forgotten to move again. He was standing before a ruin, a collapsed metal structure half swallowed by the biomechanical forest. Inside the ruin, something was glowing, a soft, pulsating, purple light, the forest's heart. This was it. The moment my entire life, the fate of my entire tribe, had led to. I raised my bow, the kinetic coils whining softly as they charged. I was the greatest hunter of my generation. My target was motionless, unaware. This should be an easy kill. I took a breath, held it, and centered my aim on the back of his hooded head. My finger tightened on the trigger, and then he spoke. His voice was not a sound, it was a whisper, a stream of pure data that bloomed directly inside my mind, bypassing my ears entirely. It was the same language as the spores, but this was clear, coherent, and resonant. The patient is terminal. A direct intervention is required. I froze, my finger locked on the trigger. He hadn't moved. He hadn't turned, but he knew I was here. He knew my purpose. He was speaking of my mother, of my people. Your weapon is an inefficient tool for this procedure, Hunter. His thought voice continued, calm and the heart you seek cannot be taken by force. He turned. Then, his movements, slow, deliberate, and utterly silent. He faced me. The featureless, white porcelain mask was a perfect, terrifying blank slate. The only sign of life was the soft, purple glow that emanated from deep within the cowl, where his eyes should be. "Who are you?" I said aloud, my own voice sounding rough and primitive after the pure, clean data of his. "I am the physician of this place," he projected. "This forest is my garden. Its heart, as you call it, is my diagnostic tool. And you, Rhea of the Dust Tribe, are the key to the cure." My mind reeled. A physician. A garden. He was speaking in riddles, in metaphors my hunter's mind could not grasp. The static was a sickness of the soul. It could not be cured by a machine. Lyra had been clear. He was the enemy. He had to be destroyed. I kept my bow aimed at his chest. "You are a liar. A spirit. You are the source of the plague." "The plague is a corruption of memory," he replied, his mental voice patient, as if explaining a complex concept to a child. "A virus that feeds on the echoes of your people. To cure it, one must understand the echoes. One must relive them." He took a slow, deliberate step towards me. His hands, the only part of him visible, besides the mask, emerged from his cloak. They were not human. They were long, elegant, and made of a polished onyx black metal. "I have the cure, but the price is your pain. I must see the memories the static is trying to erase. I must see them through your eyes." He was insane. He wanted to interface with me, to connect to my mind. It was a violation, an abomination. "Stay back," I warned, my aim unwavering. He continued his slow, inexorable advance. "Your tribe is fading. Your mother has forgotten your name. Your own memories are beginning to fray at the edges. You have felt the static, have you not? The moments of lost time. The names you can almost, but not quite, remember." His words were a physical blow. He was right. For weeks, I had been ignoring the signs in myself, the moments of hesitation, the faces of my childhood friends that were becoming blurry. The static was already inside me. He stopped just a few feet from me, the tip of my fully charged bow aimed directly at the center of his chest. He showed no fear. He showed nothing. He was a perfect, calm void. He slowly raised one of his long, black, metallic hands, and gently, with an impossible slowness, reached out and touched the tip of the kinetic emitter on my bow. "This heart is a weapon," his voice whispered in my mind. "The heart I need is yours." The moment his fingers touched my bow, a surge of energy, a wave of pure, raw data, shot up my arms and into my mind. It was not a memory. It was a diagnostic. I saw myself. My own biological systems laid barren lines of flowing, purple code. I saw the tendrils of the static, a dark, creeping corruption, already wrapped around the core of my own memories. And I saw the cure, a brilliant, complex algorithm of light, waiting in his mind. And I saw the cost. To accept the cure, I had to drop the bow. I had to lower my defenses. I had to surrender my past, my pain, my very soul, to this silent, faceless, and utterly alien God. The hunter had to become the patient, and I did not know if I could survive the operation. The diagnostic faded from my mind, leaving behind the cold, terrifying certainty of its truth. The static was already in me, a silent, creeping thief in the halls of my own memory. The bow in my hands, once a symbol of my strength and purpose, now felt impossibly heavy, a useless tool against an enemy I could not see. My mission had been simple. Find the god, kill it, take its heart. But the god was a physician, and the heart he wanted was my own. The hunter's path had led to a dead end. Now, E stood at a new, terrifying crossroads, and both paths seemed to lead to a different kind of death. I looked at the peregrino. His featureless porcelain mask was a perfect blank canvas onto which my fear painted 1,000 monstrous possibilities. Was this a trick? A spirit's bargain designed to consume my soul? Yet, the diagnostic had felt clinical, honest. The cold, irrefutable logic of a machine, not the seductive whisper of a demon. Lyra, in her final, lucid moments, had told me to kill him. But Lyra's mind was already being consumed by the very plague I was trying to stop. Was her final command the wisdom of an echo hunter, or the paranoid raving of a dying woman? The purple glow from within his cowl seemed to soften, to pulse with a slow, patient rhythm. He did not press. He did not threaten. He simply stood there, his long, onyx-black fingers still resting gently on the tip of my bow, a silent, waiting question. My tribe was dying. My mother was a ghost. I was next. The path of the hunter had failed. The path of the patient was a terrifying, unknown void, but it was the only path left. With a deep, shuddering breath that felt like a surrender, I slowly, deliberately, lowered my bow. The high-pitched whine of the kinetic coils died, the silence that followed roaring in my ears. I unslung the weapon from my shoulder and laid it on the moss-covered, metallic ground between us. It was the ultimate act of trust for one of my people, to be unarmed before a stranger. It was an offering. A logical decision, his thought voice chimed, the sound calm and devoid of any triumph. He retracted his hand. The procedure requires a stable, sterile environment. Follow me. He turned and glided silently towards the ruin he had been standing before. I hesitated for only a moment, then followed my bare hands, feeling unnervingly empty at my sides. He led me into the heart of the collapsed structure. It was not a ruin, I realized, but a laboratory, or it had been 1,000 years ago. Broken consoles and shattered glass cylinders lay half buried in the dirt, all of it covered in a thick blanket of the same glowing metallic moss that grew on the trees. In the center of the room was a single, intact piece of technology, a large, circular platform, and from its center rose the pulsating, soft purple light I had mistaken for the forest's heart. This is the diagnostic core, he projected, gesturing to the platform with one of his long, metallic hands. It is the nexus of this forest. The whispers you sense are the fragmented memories of this place, of the people who came before. The forest is not just a garden, Echo Hunter. It is an archive, a living library of a civilization long dead. He was an archivist, a guardian, just like the android from Lyra's fragmented stories. The realization was a small, steadying anchor in the turbulent sea of my fear. The static is a virus that feeds on these memory fragments, he continued. It has infected your people through the very air they breathe. It targets the parts of the human mind that store narrative and emotional memory. It does not just erase data. It erases the story. To create an antivirus, I must map the corruption. I must see the story. The virus is trying to eat your story. He gestured to the circular platform. The procedure is simple. You will stand on the core. I will initiate a low-intensity neural link. I will not control you. I will not take from you. I will simply listen. I will observe the memories as you experience them. It is the only way. I looked at the glowing platform, then back at his blank, porcelain mask. I was being asked to lay my entire soul bare before this alien being, to show him the secret, guarded memories that defined me, that made me Rhea. It was a violation far deeper than any physical wound, but the image of my mother's empty eyes, the terrifying feeling of my own memories beginning to fray it, was a stronger force than my fear. I took another deep breath and stepped on to the platform. The metal was cool beneath my leather boots. A soft, purple light enveloped me, warm and humming with a gentle, latent power. It felt peaceful. The link will be initiated now. His voice came, and it was softer, more like a physician at a bedside than a god in a room did not resist. Just remember. He stood before me on the other side of the platform, placing his long, onyx-black hands on a series of glowing control panels. The purple light around me intensified, and the whispers, the data spores that floated in the air, began to swirl around me, drawn to the energy of the core. The world dissolved. I was a child again, my small hands clasped in the strong, warm hand of my father. We were walking through the whispering forest, but it was different. Less melancholic, more alive. The whispers in the air were clearer, forming coherent fragments of song and speech from the old world. My father, the echo hunter before Lyra, was teaching me the ways of our people. Listen, Rhea. His voice echoed in my memory, a sound I had not heard in 10 years. Everything has a story. The wind, the trees, the dust. An echo hunter does not just hunt game. We hunt stories. We are the memory of our tribe. I felt a phantom warmth on my cheek, the memory of his hand as he touched the spot where my scar would one day be. The memory was perfect, whole, a flawless crystal of a time before the static, before the loss. Then, from the edge of the memory, a darkness crept in. A faint, buzzing static, corrupting the edges of the perfect blue sky. The sound of my father's laughter became distorted, distant. His face began to blur, the details fading. It was the virus. It was the static, and I was watching it try to eat my most precious memory. I see it, the Peregrino's thought voice whispered, a calm, clinical presence within my own mind. He was not a participant. He was an observer. A physician watching a disease through a microscope. The virus attaches to the emotional core of the memory. It severs the neural links that connect the event to its emotional significance. A surge of pure, primal rage filled me. I would not let it have this. I would not let it take my father from me again. I focused all my will, all my strength as a hunter, on the memory. I held on to the feeling of his hand in mine, the sound of his voice, the warmth of the sun. I fought back. The static receded. The image of my father's face sharpened, becoming clear and whole once more. The memory was safe. The neural link severed. I was back in the laboratory, standing on the platform, panting, my body slick with the sweat I hadn't realized I was producing. The Peregrino stood before me, his masked head tilted. Remarkable, he projected, and for the first time I sensed an emotion in his mental voice. Something akin to surprise, to awe. Your control is unprecedented. You are not just a carrier of the memories, you are a guardian, a warrior. I am an echo hunter, I gasped, my legs trembling. You are more than that, he replied. You have shown me the nature of the virus, but you have also shown me the nature of the cure. The cure is not an algorithm I can write. The cure is you, your will, your strength to hold on to your story. He stepped away from the console and glided towards me. He stopped directly in front of me, so close I could see my own distorted, wide-eyed reflection in the blank, white porcelain of his mask. My initial diagnosis was incomplete, he projected, his mental voice now filled with a new, strange intensity. I do not need to observe your memories from a distance. I need to be your anchor asterisk within. Asterisk them. I must link with you directly, join you in the fight against the static, and reinforce your will with my own processing power. We must fight it together from the inside. He slowly raised one of his long, onyx black hands, not to a console, but towards me, towards my face. His intention was clear. He wanted to initiate a direct, physical, and far more powerful link. He wanted to enter my mind, not as an observer, but as a partner, as an ally. The logical, detached physician was gone. In his place was something else, something far more dangerous and far more compelling, a being who had seen the strength of my soul, and now wanted to touch it. His hand, a thing of polished, edge-touched onyx, hung in the air between us, a silent, terrifying, and profoundly tempting offer, a direct link. He wanted to step inside my memories, to walk the ghost roads of my past beside me. The hunter in me screamed that it was a trap, a final, seductive trick to gain control of my mind, my will, my very soul. To let him in would be to surrender the last piece of myself that was truly mine. But the echo hunter, the part of me that had felt the chilling touch of the static eating away at my father's face, knew he was right. I had fought it back this time, through sheer force of will. But the virus was relentless. It would return, stronger, and my own strength, my own memories, were finite. I could not win this war alone. My tribe's faces flashed through my mind, my mother's empty eyes, Lyra's final, fragmented warnings, the hollowed-out shells of a people who had forgotten their own story. My pain, my fear of violation, was a small price to pay for a chance, however slim, to save them. I took a deep, steadying breath, the air humming with the energy of the core. I did not speak. I simply closed my eyes and gave a single, sharp nod. Consent. His metallic fingers, cool and impossibly smooth, touched the side of my face, his thumb resting on my temple. The contact was gentle, reverent, the touch of a scientist handling a priceless, fragile artifact. I braced myself for the violent, consuming rush of the neural link, but it did not come. Instead, there was just a soft, warm, pulsing sensation, a gentle knock at the door of my consciousness. I will not force entry, his thought voice whispered. A sound of pure reassurance. You must open the door. Show me the memory you fear the most, the one where the static is strongest. I understood. I had to lead him to the battlefield. I dredged up the memory I had spent my entire life trying to bury, a wound so deep I rarely dared to touch it. The day my father died, the world of the laboratory dissolved, replaced by the memory. We were in the forest again, not as a dream, but as a perfect, flawless reconstruction. But this Chimi, I was not alone. The Peregrino was there with me, a tall, silent, cloaked figure at the edge of my perception, a ghost within my own memory scape. He was not a participant, just an observer. His presence, a steady.com anchor in the swirling chaos of my past. The memory was of a hunt. My father was teaching me how to track a shadow cat, a large, elusive predator. He was strong, vibrant, his laughter a warm, real sound in the metallic air. I was young, eager, my small bow clutched in my hands. It was a happy memory, one of the last. The memory's stable. The Peregrino's voice chimed in my head, a clinical note. Where is the corruption? It's not here yet, I whispered, my voice sounding strange in the landscape of my own mind. It's later. The memory shifted. The hunt had gone wrong. The shadow cat, cornered, had lunged, not at my father, but at me. I saw it all again with a terrifying, crystal clarity. The glint of its metallic claws, its snarling, static-filled roar. I had frozen, a child paralyzed by fear. My father had thrown himself in front of me, his body a shield, and then the pain came. Not my pain. His, a raw, white-hot, an overwhelming agony that flooded my senses. The memory became a blur of motion, of shouting, of the coppery tints of blood. He had saved me, but the cost had been his life. And then the static came. It was a black, oily corruption that bled into the memory from the edges, thick and hungry. It did not just blur the details, it actively rewrote them. It twisted my father's final, pained smile into a grimace of accusation. It warped his last words. I love you, my little hunter. Until they sounded like you did this, you failed. The memory of his sacrifice was being poisoned, transformed from a story of love and bravery into a narrative of my own guilt and failure. This was the true evil of the static. It didn't just erase you, it made you hate the person you had been. Fascinating. The Peregrino's voice cut through my agony, and this time it was not calm. It held a note of cold, scientific fury. The virus does not just delete, it falsifies. It creates a feedback loop of negative emotion to weaken the host's psychic resilience. The corrupted memory was a vortex, pulling me down into a spiral of shame and self-loathing. I was losing the fight. The true story, the memory of my father's love, was fading, being replaced by this new, monstrous lie. Your will is not enough, the Peregrino stated. You cannot fight a lie with a feeling. You must fight it with a fact. Suddenly, his presence, which had been at the edge of my perception, was beside me. The tall, cloaked figure of the wanderer stood next to me in the heart of my own memory. He raised one of his long onyx black hands, not towards me, but towards the corrupted image of my dying father. You are accessing a corrupted data file, Rhea. His voice boomed, no longer a whisper, but a command that shook the very foundations of the memory. Initiating a cross-reference with the primary archive, a wave of pure, clean data, a brilliant, purple light, flowed from his outstretched hand and slammed into the memory. I was suddenly seeing the event, not just from my own terrified, childlike perspective, but from a dozen others. The recorded logs of the station's atmospheric sensors, showing the precise trajectory of the Shadow Cat's attack. The biometric data from my father's own medical implant, a secret he had carried, showing a pre-existing cardiac weakness that had given out under the stress. The data was cold, irrefutable, and absolute. The attack was not my fault. His death was a tragic confluence of a dozen different variables. My failure to act had been a factor, yes, but not the cause. Fact. His voice declared, "Your father's sacrifice was an act of love, not a condemnation of your failure. The guilt you feel is an artificial construct, a weapon of the virus. The black, oily corruption of the static recoiled from the clean, bright light of the truth." The twisted, accusatory grimace on my father's face softened, returning to the pained, loving smile I remembered. The warped words faded, replaced by the true echo of his final breath. "I love you, my little hunter." The memory stabilized. The pain of the loss was still there, a clean, sharp, and honest grief, but the poison, the guilt, was gone. The link severed, and I was back in the laboratory, on my knees on the platform, tears streaming down my face. But they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of catharsis, of a wound finally, truly, beginning to heal. The Peregrino stood before me, his masked head tilted. He retracted his hand, which he had been holding outstretched. "The procedure was successful," he projected, his voice returning to its calm, clinical tone. "We have repelled the primary corruption, but the virus is still in your system." This was only the first battle. I looked up at him, at the blank, featureless mask, at the being who had just walked through the darkest corner of my soul and held a light to the shadows. He was not a god. He was not a spirit. He was a physician of the mind, a warrior of the truth. "What you did," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't have the words for it. There are none necessary," he replied. "This is my function. I was created to heal. The static is a disease. Well, fight it together." He extended his long, black, metallic hand to me and offered to help me to my feet. I looked at his hand, then up at the blank, porcelain mask. I had come here to take his heart. Instead, he had just saved mine, and as I placed my hand in his and allowed him to pull me up, I knew that my life and his were now inextricably and dangerously intertwined. The catharsis of the first procedure, as he called it, was a strange and powerful thing. The grief for my father, a weight I had carried like a shroud for 10 years, was not gone, but it had been transformed. The toxic, corrosive guilt had been burned away by the clean, cold light of his logic, leaving behind a pure, honest sorrow. It was a clean wound, finally allowed to heal. For the first time, I could remember my father's smile, without also remembering the phantom voice of the static, whispering that his death was my fault. This newfound clarity brought with it a new, profound sense of purpose. My mission was no longer a blind hunt for a mythical cure. It was a targeted, systematic war against a known enemy, and the ancient, enigmatic being before me was not my target, he was my only ally. "How many more?" I asked, my voice steady, the voice of a warrior, not a patient. "How many more memories do we have to face?" Your mnemonic core contains approximately 1.7 million distinct memory events, the Peregrino's thought voice projected, his tone as clinical as ever. "My initial scan indicates the static has established deep-rooted corruption in 312 of them. These are your foundational memories, the ones that define your sense of self. They are the virus's primary targets. 312 battles left to fight." The number was daunting, but for the first time, the fight felt possible. "When do we begin the next one?" I asked. "Negative," he replied, a hint of something like caution in his mythical voice. "Your neural pathways are experiencing significant stress from the initial link. A period of rest and integration is required." Continuing immediately would risk a feedback loop, causing permanent damage. We will proceed when your systems have stabilized. He was treating my mind with the care of a surgeon handling delicate tissue. For all his alien logic, he understood my fragility far better than I did. He glided silently to a corner of the laboratory ruin and retrieved two simple, metallic cups. He knelt by a section of the floor where a cluster of the strange, crystalline flora of the forest grew, pulsing with a faint, internal light. With a precise, gentle motion, he broke off a small piece of the crystal. It dissolved into a fine, glowing dust in his palm. He tipped the dust into one of the cups, which was already half filled with a clear, liquid-filtered water, I presumed. The dust dissolved, and the water began to glow with the same soft, purple light as the diagnostic core. He offered the cup to me. "This will aid in your neural recovery," he projected. "It is a simple catalyst designed to promote synaptic regeneration." I took the cup, my fingers brushing against his cold, onyx black ones. The glowing liquid was warm and tasted faintly of ozone and something sweet, like honey. As I drank, a feeling of calm, quiet energy spread through me, soothing the frayed edges of my mind. "What is this place?" I asked, gesturing to the ruins, the strange flora, the humming core. "Who built it? Who were they?" "They were my creators," he said, his cloaked form turning to look at the pulsating purple light of the core. "They were a colony of scientists and artists who came to this world long before the Great Fire. They believed that memory, that story, was the most essential component of consciousness. This forest, this archive, was their life's work. It was designed to be a living library, a place where memories could be stored not as data, but as living, evolving echoes." He pointed a long, metallic finger at the glowing trees outside. "Those trees are mnemonic processors. They absorb the ambient data of this world, the stories of those who live and die here, and encode it into the whispers, the spores you see. This entire forest is a planetary mind." The scale of it was staggering. I was standing in the brain of a dead civilization. "And you?" I asked. "What was your function?" "I was the physician," he replied. "The curator. My purpose was to maintain the health of the archive, to heal corrupted data, and to guide those who sought to learn from the memories. When my creators passed, my directive remained. I have been the sole guardian of these stories for 1,000 cycles." "You said the static is a virus that feeds on the memories," I reasoned, the pieces clicking into place. "It didn't come from the forest, did it?" "It came from my people." "Correct," he confirmed. "Your tribe carries a unique genetic marker, a latent psychic resonance. It allows you to hear the echoes of the past, a skill you have honed into the art of the echo. But it also makes you uniquely vulnerable. The static is a mutation, a data parasite that evolved within your own people, a cancer of your own collective memory. It has now begun to infect the forest itself, corrupting the archive I am sworn to protect." My heart sank. We were not just victims. We were the source of the plague. "So, by curing me," I whispered, "you're also curing the forest." "That is the logical, symbiotic outcome," he projected. "To save the story, I must save the storyteller." We spent the next cycle in a state of quiet preparation. He taught me simple, meditative exercises, mental techniques to strengthen my own psychic resilience, to build walls of focus within my own mind. He was training me, honing my will into a weapon. During this time, I watched him. His silence was no longer a mystery, but a canvas. I saw the profound, ancient loneliness in the way he would stand for hours, observing the slow, silent growth of a crystalline flower. I saw the weight of his purpose in the deliberate, careful way he would mend a broken data conduit in the lab. He was a being of immense patience, a gardener in a garden of ghosts. My fear of his blank, porcelain mask began to fade, replaced by a deep, burning curiosity. What was behind it? Was there a face, a machine visage of sensors and metal, or was there nothing at all, just a being of pure energy and consciousness? The mask was a symbol of his nature, a perfect, unreadable barrier between his world and mine. When he deemed me ready, we returned to the diagnostic core. The next memory is deeper, he warned, his mental voice serious. It is a foundational memory of your tribe, a memory of great loss that the static has heavily corrupted. The pain will be significant. I'm ready, I said, my voice firm. I stepped onto the platform, the purple light enveloping me. He placed his hand on my temple, the touch now familiar, almost comforting. The world dissolved once more. We were standing on a vast, open plain under a sky bruised with the colors of a double sunset. A great herd of biomechanical grazers, creatures of chrome and sinew, thundered past. And all around me were my people, hundreds of them, their faces painted for a great hunt, their laughter and shouts filling the air. It was a memory from before I was born. Atribao Ashu, the story of the last great hunt, Atali told by our elders around the fire. But the static was already here, a poison in the well of our collective past. The triumphant hunt, the story of our tribe's greatest moment of unity and strength, was twisted. The memory flickered, and the grazers became monstrous, terrifying machines. The hunters' confident shouts became screams of terror. The story of triumph was being rewritten as a story of a great, bloody defeat. The virus is stronger here. The peregrino's voice echoed in my mind, his cloaked form a steady presence beside me. It is feeding on generations of retold fear. We must find the source code of the memory. The first telling. He placed his mental hand on mine, and together, we pushed deeper, past the layers of corrupted retellings, searching for the original, untainted memory. We flew backwards through time, through the minds of a dozen storytellers, until we found it. The mind of the first hunter. The scene snapped into a new, sharp focus. We were there on the day of the hunt, and the truth was both simpler and more tragic. It had been a great triumph, but one hunter, a young boy, had been lost, falling into a ravine during the chase. The memory was not one of defeat, but of a victory tainted by a single, profound loss. It was that single point of grief that the static had latched onto. The tiny crack in the story that it had widened over generations until it had shattered the entire narrative. Now, the peregrino commanded, hold on to the truth, the victory, the loss. Hold on to both. Do not let one erase the other. That is the strength of a true story, Rhea. It holds both the light and the shadow. Together, we focused our combined will on the true memory. We pushed back against the tide of corrupted fear, reinforcing the story of the brave hunters, while also honoring the memory of the boy who had been lost. We did not erase the pain. We integrated it. When we returned to the lab, I was exhausted, but also elated. We had not just healed a memory. We had reclaimed a piece of our people's soul. I looked at the peregrino, at this strange, silent being who was teaching me the true meaning of my own history. My hunt for a god had led me to this strange, intimate partnership, a dance through the most sacred and painful corners of my mind. Thank you, I said, and the words were not enough. The procedure was successful, he projected, but then, a new, unexpected thought bloomed in my mind, a thought that was not a clinical report. The resonance of your courage is a pleasing data point. I stared at him, my heart giving a strange, unfamiliar flutter. A machine dedicated to logic, to data, to clinical precision, had just told me, in its own strange way, that he liked my courage. The physician was gone. the guardian, was gone. In his place was something new, something unexpected, and something that made the small, safe world of my tribe feel very, very far away. The phrase, "a pleasing data point," echoed in my mind long after he projected it. It was a simple, clinical string of words, yet it was the most profound compliment I had ever received. He was a being of pure, unvarnished logic. For him to classify my courage, an illogical human emotion, as pleasing was a seismic shift. It meant his analysis of me was no longer just a diagnostic. He was developing a preference, a bias. The physician was beginning to admire the patient, and that realization sent a strange, warm, and deeply unsettling flutter through my own systems. Our sessions at the diagnostic core became the new rhythm of our lives. Every few cycles, once he determined my neural pathways had stabilized, we would journey together into another of my corrupted memories. Each journey was an ordeal, a harrowing battle against the insidious lies of the static. We fought through the memory of a great famine, where the virus had twisted a story of resilience and shared sacrifice into one of hoarding and betrayal. We battled through the memory of a first, failed love, where the static had warped a simple, youthful heartbreak into a narrative of profound, personal inadequacy. With each battle, our partnership grew stronger, more intuitive. I learned to anticipate the virus's tactics, to feel its cold, oily presence at the edges of a memory. He, in turn, learned to read the nuances of my own emotional state, providing the precise, logical counter-argument, the irrefutable piece of data that would shatter the static's emotional lies. He was the hammer of truth, and I was the anvil of will, and together, we were slowly, painfully, reforging the broken history of my people. In the quiet cycles between our sessions, a new, comfortable intimacy bloomed in the ruins of the laboratory. The silence between us was no longer the silence of a hunter and her prey, or a doctor and his patient. It was a shared silence, the quiet understanding of two soldiers resting between battles. Would watch him work, his long, onyx-black fingers moving with a jeweler's precision as he mended the ancient, delicate systems of the forest archive. He was a being of infinite patience. He never rushed. He never made a mistake. His every action was one of purpose and quiet, focused grace. I found a strange, deep beauty in his efficiency, in the perfect, logical flow of his movements. He, in turn, continued to observe me, but his observations were no longer just for data collection. He would ask me questions, his thought voice, a gentle, curious presence in my mind. "Your people have a ritual scar," he projected one day, his gaze resting on the faint, white line on my cheek. "I have analyzed its placement and pattern. It has no practical function. What is its purpose?" "It is a reminder," I explained, my fingers tracing the familiar line. "It is given to a hunter when they make their first kill alone. It reminds us of the life we have taken, of the cost of our own survival. It is a mark of honor, but it is also a mark of sorrow." "Fascinating," he replied, and I could sense the deep, churning calculations behind the word, a single symbol that represents both success and grief. The efficiency of human ritual is complex. He was trying to understand us, not just as a biological system, but as a culture, a people, a story. During one of our rest cycles, I found a new courage. "Silas," I said, using the name from Lyra's stories, a name I had not dared to use before. He did not react, but the purple glow from within his cowl seemed to brighten slightly. "Your mask. Why do you wear it? What is behind it?" The silence stretched for a long time. I thought he would not answer, that I had crossed a line. "It is a tool," he finally projected, his mental voice quiet, almost subdued like your scar. "It is a symbol. It is meant to remove the self, to ensure that those who seek knowledge from the archive see only the data, not the vessel that holds it. It is a symbol of neutrality, of service. He paused. My creators believed that a face was a distraction. A distraction. He wore a mask to erase himself, to be a perfect, unbiased conduit for the truth. And yet, I had never met a being with a more powerful, more profound presence. There is no face beneath it that you would recognize as such, he added, as if sensing my next question. Only the machinery that allows me to see. It would be displeasing to your aesthetic sensibilities. He was protecting me, even from his own appearance. The gesture was so unexpectedly considerate, so deeply thoughtful, that it made my heart ache. The change in my own people was the fuel that kept me going. After each successful procedure, I would make the long journey back to the edge of the forest, where my tribe's hunters would be waiting. I would tell them the true story, the one we had reclaimed. I would tell them of the last great hunt, of the victory and the loss. And as I spoke, I could see a light returning to their eyes. The fog of the static would recede. A piece of their stolen soul returned to them. My mother, after I retold the story of my own birth, a memory we fought for and won, looked at me, and for a fleeting, beautiful moment, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Rhea, she whispered, her voice a dry rustle of leaves before the fog rolled in again. It was working. The cure was real. But our sanctuary, our quiet, isolated world of healing and discovery, was not destined to last. The threat, when it came from the sky. We were in the middle of a session, battling through a particularly nasty piece of corrupted code attached to a memory of a childhood illness. Suddenly, the Peregrino ripped me from the memory. The transition so abrupt, it left me gasping and disoriented on the diagnostic core. What is it? I asked, my mind still reeling. An anomaly, he projected, his thought voice, sharp, urgent. He was no longer looking at me. His masked head was tilted upwards, as if listening to something far beyond the walls of the laboratory. A vessel. It has breached the upper atmosphere. I scrambled off the platform and ran to the edge of the ruin, my heart pounding with a new, cold dread. I looked up. Through the canopy of glowing, metallic leaves, I saw it, a thin, silver line, descending from the heavens, trailing a plume of white fire. It was a ship, a skyship, like the one that had brought me here, but larger, sleeker, and marked with a symbol I recognized with a jolt of pure terror. A stylized X. Xylos Corporation, the faceless, all-powerful entity from Lyra's fragmented final tales. They cannot be here, I whispered, my voice trembling. This world was forgotten. A dead zone on every known star. They are not here for the planet, the Peregrino projected, his tall, cloaked form appearing silently beside me. The purple glow from his cowl was a tight, focused beam. They are tracking a signal, an ancient, pre-fire energy signature. He turned his masked face to me. They are tracking me. The ship descended with a quiet, menacing grace, its engines a low, powerful hum that was an obscene violation of the forest's gentle whispers. It landed in a large, open clearing, a few miles from our position, the force of its landing sending a tremor through the metallic soil. What do they want? I asked. I am a relic of a technology they cannot replicate, he explained, his mental voice grim. A functioning pre-fire android, with a direct link to the last uncorrupted historical archive in the galaxy. To them, I am not a physician. I am not a guardian. I am the ultimate prize, an asset to be acquired. A ramp lowered from the belly of the silver ship. Figures emerged. Not just corporate technicians, they were soldiers, clad in black advanced combat armor, their helmets concealing their faces, and with them another figure, one that moved with a familiar, terrifying, fluid grace, a tall, impossibly handsome man, with jet black hair, and a face so perfect it was inhuman. One of his eyes was a cold, human blue. The other was a glowing, cybernetic lens. It was him, the cyborg from Lyra's final, terrified whispers, the one she called Cain. The Peregrino went perfectly still. The purple light from his cowl flared with an intensity that bordered on violence. Unit 734, he projected. And the name was not a simple identification. It was a curse. The Butcher of Cygnus X. The last creation of my creators. His mental voice was no longer calm. It was filled with the cold, ancient fury of a god staring at his fallen, monstrous brother. The name, Unit 734, hung in my mind, a cold, sharp-edged stone of data. The Butcher. The last creation. The quiet, melancholic peace of our shared mission was shattered, replaced by the harsh, brutal reality of the outside world. A world of corporations, assassins, and monstrous legacies. The Peregrino had been my guide, my physician, a being of serene, ancient wisdom, but as he stood beside me, the purple light within his cowl flaring with that cold, contained fury, I realized I did not know him at all. I was seeing only the part of him that tended the garden, not the part that had witnessed the world that came before. "He is your brother," I whispered, my voice a breath of disbelief. "We are of the same origin," his thought voice corrected, the distinction sharp and absolute, forged by the same hands, but our purpose is divergent. He was designed not to heal, but to excise. He is a scalpel, where I am a suture. He was the final, desperate solution of our creators to combat the human conflicts that preceded the Great Fire. He paused, and his mental voice was laced with a profound, ancient sorrow. He performed his function too well. On the forest floor, the corporate soldiers fanned out, their movements precise and disciplined. They were not exploring. They were hunting. Cain, Unit 734, stood apart from them, his head tilted, his mismatched eyes scanning the biomechanical forest. One human, one machine, both utterly cold. He was not just looking. He was listening, tasting the very air, his advanced sensors searching for the energy signature that had led them here. "He knows I am here," the Peregrino projected. "He can feel the energy of the archive, a discordant note in the silence of this forgotten world. He will be drawn to the core." My hunter's instincts, long dormant during my sessions of healing, flared back to life. My hand instinctively went to my back, to the high-tech bow I had laid aside. This was a threat I understood, an enemy to be fought. "We can fight them," I said, my voice low and fierce. "This is your forest. You know its secrets. I am a hunter. We can set traps, use the terrain." "To fight him is to lose," the Peregrino replied. "He's Tony Grimm. His chassis is a weapon. His mind is a tactical computer. He has processed 10,000 years of conflict data. He cannot be defeated by force." His masked head turned, the glowing purple voids of his eyes seeming to look directly at me. "He can only be outmaneuvered. And his primary weakness is the same as mine. A directive." "What directive?" I asked. "He is an asset of the Xylos Corporation," he explained. "His function is to acquire other valuable assets. He will be programmed to capture me with minimal damage. This is our only advantage. He wants a prize, not a casualty." He turned and glided silently back into the deepest shadows of the laboratory ruin. "We must leave this place. The core is a beacon. As long as we are near it, he can find us." He led me through the back of the ruin, into a part of the forest I had never seen. The trees here were older, larger, their metallic bark scarred and pitted. The luminous data spores in the air were thicker. The whispers of the past, a low, constancy murmur. He moved with a silent, urgent grace, his tattered cloak blending into the strange, shifting shadows of the biomechanical woods. I followed, my bow now in my hand, its kinetic coils humming with a low, ready power. Every snap of a metallic twig, every flicker of a glowing leaf, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. We were no longer doctor and patient. We were prey. This way, his voice echoed in my head. There are older systems here. Deeper pathways, places the archive itself has forgotten. He led me to a massive, gnarled tree, its base a complex knot of thick, metallic roots. He placed one of his long, onyx black hands on its trunk. The bark shimmered, and a section of it dissolved, revealing a dark, circular opening, a tunnel leading down into the earth. "What is this?" he whispered. "A service conduit," he projected. From before the archive was a garden. "This forest has deep roots." We descended into the darkness. The tunnel was a relic of the world that came before, a tube of smooth, cold metal. Unlike the organic chaos of the forest above, faint, purple locator lights pulsed softly on the ceiling, illuminating our path. The air was cool, clean, and utterly silent. The whispers were gone. We were cut off from the forest's network. "Where are we going?" I asked. My voice a small, contained sound in the tunnel. "To a place of silence," he replied, "a place where our energy signatures cannot be read." He's a hunter of technology. We must become ghosts. We walked for what felt like miles in the silent, pulsing darkness. My mind raced. I had been so close. The cure for my people was within my grasp. But now, it was being ripped away by the ghosts of a forgotten corporate war. "Do not despair," his voice came, soft and reassuring, as if he could hear my own frantic thoughts. "The procedure is not finished, but it must be paused. If he acquires me, he acquires the archive. The cure, and the memory of 100 generations, will become the property of the Xylos Corporation. That is an unacceptable outcome." His logic was, as always, irrefutable, but the thought of returning to my tribe with nothing, of watching my mother fade completely, was a physical pain in my chest. We finally emerged into a vast, spherical cavern. It was a dead space, a hollowed-out asteroid that the forest's roots had not yet reached. The only light came from a single, faint beam emanating from the Peregrino's own chest, a low-power maintenance light. The silence here was absolute. "He will not find us here," the Peregrino projected. "We are shielded by a kilometer of solid rock and ore. Here, we can wait. He will search. He will not find us. And eventually, he will leave." "And my people?" I asked, the desperation in my voice sharp. "They don't have time to wait." The Peregrino was silent for a long moment. He turned his masked face to me, the purple glow from his cowl a soft, lonely light in the vast darkness. "Then we must give him something else to hunt," he said, and his plan, when he revealed it, was one of such beautiful, terrifying, and sacrificial logic that it took my breath away. He intended to create a decoy. Using the last of his direct access to the archive's core, he could create a phantom energy signal, a ghost of his own presence, and send it on a long, slow journey to the other side of the planet. It would be a faint signal, but it would be enough to draw Kane's attention, to lead the hunter on a long, fruitless chase that would take him weeks, maybe months. It would buy us the time we needed. But there was a cost. To create the phantom, he would have to sever his own connection to the archive. He would have to cut himself off from the garden he had tended for 1,000 years. He would be blind, deaf, and alone, trapped in this silent, cavern with me, his only link to the outside world. He would be sacrificing his godhood to become a mere machine, a refugee in his own kingdom. Why? I whispered. Why would you do that? He raised one of his long, metallic hands and gently, almost hesitantly, touched the ritualistic scar on my cheek. His touch was as cool as stone, because the survival of the storyteller, his thought voice came, softer and more profound than I had ever heard it, is more important than the preservation of the library. He turned away from me and faced the dark, cavernous wall, preparing to initiate the sequence. In that moment he was no longer a machine, a physician, or a god. He was a being making a choice, a sacrifice born not of pure logic, but of the one pleasing data point he had learned from me. Courage. The cavern was a void, a pocket of absolute silence and darkness, and in its center, the peregrino was preparing to commit a form of suicide. He stood facing the cold, rock wall, his tall, cloaked form a column of absolute stillness. He was severing a connection that had been his only companion, his entire purpose for a millennium. He was choosing to become blind, to become a refugee, all to buy me a few precious weeks of time. The sheer, selfless magnitude of his logic was a thing of terrifying beauty, a concept so alien to my hunter's mind, which was built on the simple calculus of survival, that I could only watch in silent, reverent. The process will be brief, his thought voice echoed in my mind, a final, calm report before he went dark. Once the phantom signal is launched, my connection to the archive will be permanently severed. I will be limited. My knowledge of the forest's systems will become a static memory, no longer a live data feed. My ability to process and heal will be offline. I will be reliant on you, Echo Hunter, for all tactical and environmental awareness. He was making himself vulnerable. He was placing his survival, the survival of a priceless, 1,000-year-old being, entirely in my hands. The weight of that trust, of that responsibility, was heavier than any burden I had ever carried. The phantom is being created, he projected. I could see the intricate brass filigree on his chassis begin to glow with a soft, pulsing light under his tattered cloak. He was pouring a part of his own essence, his own unique energy signature, into a ghost. Trajectory calculated. Launching in 3-to-1, I felt it, more than I heard it. A profound, silent snap in the very fabric of the world around me. A subtle, psychic vibration that shivered through the rock and through my own bones. The phantom was away. The decoy was in play. At the same moment, the beautiful, intricate filigree on his body, which had been glowing brightly, faded to a dull, lifeless brass. The constant, low-level hum of his presence in my mind, a background noise I had grown so accustomed to, vanished. The silence he left behind was a new kind of empty. It was not the silence of the cavern, it was the silence of his own mind. He had cut the cord. He stood motionless for a full minute. I held my breath, my every sense straining in the darkness. Had it worked? Was he still there? Silas, I whispered, my voice a small, hesitant sound in the vast, dark chamber. There was no mental response. Only silence. I took a step closer, my hand outstretched. Silas, I said again, louder this time. He turned, and the movement was wrong. It was no longer the silent, graceful glide of a god. It was the stiff, mechanical movement of a simple machine. He had lost the intuitive, all-seeing awareness that the forest had provided. He was now just a being in a dark room, relying on his own limited physical sensors. The purple glow from within his cowl, the light I had mistaken for his eyes, was dimmer now, its radiance muted. It no longer seemed to see everything. It just was. My connection to the archive is terminated, he said, And this time, it was not a projection in my head. It was his real voice, his physical vocalizer, a sound I had never heard before. It was a deep resonant and completely synthetic monotone, devoid of the complex, bell-like chimes of his mental voice. It was the voice of a machine, not a mind. The sound was a chilling affirmation of what he had lost. My long-range sensors are offline. I am blind. My heart ached with a grief I hadn't expected. I was mourning the loss of the god, even as I stood beside the machine that remained. I will be your eyes, I said, and the promise was a solemn vow. We spent the next few hours in a new, tensy silence. He stood by the wall, a statue of dormant potential, conserving his energy. I took on the role of the scout. I found the entrance to the service conduit we had used and crept back up the tunnel, my bow in hand, my senses on high alert. I was a hunter again, and my territory was the world my partner could no longer see. I emerged into the forest like a ghost. The world was different now. The constant, low-level hum of the whispers, the data spores, was still there, but without Silas's mind to translate them. They were just a meaningless, pretty static. The forest was no longer a library. It was just a strange, metal jungle. I moved with the silent, practiced tread of my ancestors, circling the perimeter of the laboratory ruin, my eyes scanning for any sign of the invaders. I found their tracks easily. Heavy, booted prints, crushing the delicate metallic moss. They had swept the area, their movements disciplined and efficient. They had found the laboratory, the diagnostic core. It was cold and dark now, its purple heart extinguished. They had found nothing. Then I saw him. Kane, Unit 734. He was standing in the center of the clearing where I had first confronted the Peregrino. He was not looking at the lab. He was looking east, his head tilted, his mismatched eyes fixed on a point on the far horizon. He was listening. He had detected the phantom. Signal is faint, but consistent. I heard his voice, a cold, synthesized baritone that carried in the still air. High-energy signature, pre-fire origin, moving on a vector of 1 CV. It is attempting to mask itself, but its decay pattern is traceable. He is taking the bait, a voice setting. My head. I jumped, my bow coming up, before I realized it was Silas, communicating through my short-range comlink, a feature on my hunting mask. His voice was a flat, tinny whisper in my ear, a ghost of his former presence. Kane gave a series of sharp, efficient commands to his soldiers. They were to break camp and proceed on the new vector. The hunt was back on. As his soldiers began to move out, Kane lingered for a moment. He knelt, his powerful form surprisingly graceful, and picked up a single, broken piece of crystalline flora from the ground. He examined it, a flicker of something, curiosity, analysis, recognition in his cold, human eye. Then he crushed it in his fist, the beautiful, glowing thing disintegrating into a fine, sparkling dust that he let drift from his fingers. He was not just a hunter. He was a creature of absolute, dispassionate destruction. He was the antithesis of the Peregrino in every way. He turned and followed his soldiers, his form disappearing into the metallic gloom of the forest. They were gone. The plan had worked. I waited for a full hour, motionless, my hunter's patience a shield. When I was certain they were truly gone, I made my way back down the conduit to the cavern. "They're gone," I said. The moment I stepped back into the silent darkness, they took the bait. Your plan worked. The outcome was within the calculated probability. Silas's synthesized voice replied from the darkness. The purple glow from his cowl brightened slightly as he turned to face me. But their presence here changes the equation. He is a relentless hunter. He will eventually realize the phantom is a decoy. He will return. Then we have to finish what we started, I said, my voice filled with a new, urgent resolve. We have to cure my people. Now, my ability to interface with your mind is compromised, he stated. Without the processing power of the archive's core, a direct neural link is inadvisable. The feedback could be unpredictable. You said the cure wasn't an algorithm you could write, I reminded him, walking towards him until I stood directly before his masked face. You said the cure was me, my will. You just have to be my anchor. You just have to be there. I was silent, processing this new, reckless proposal. He was blind, weakened, cut off from his power. To link with me now would be to place his own fractured consciousness entirely at the mercy of my chaotic, human one. It was a risk far greater than any he had taken before. The logic is flawed, he said finally. But he paused, and in that pause, I felt the weight of his choice. The data of your courage remains a compelling argument. He raised his long, onyx black hand, not to my temple, but to my own hand, which was clutching my bow. He gently, deliberately, took the weapon from me and set it aside, just as I had done for him what felt like a lifetime ago. Then, he took my bare hand in his. His touch was cold, but it was a solid, real, and steadying presence. In the dark, show me the way, Echo Hunter. His flat, synthesized voice said, but in my mind I heard the ghost of his true voice. A soft, resonant chime. I will be your shield. He Cavern was our new sanctuary, a pocket of deep, absolute silence in a universe of noise. There was no diagnostic core here, no humming machinery, no glowing purple light. There was only the darkness and us. The procedure, stripped of the archive's technology, became a raw, intimate, and profoundly dangerous ritual. We would sit, facing each other on the cold, stone floor, cross-legged, our knees almost touching. He would take both of my hands in his long, cool, onyx black fingers, a strange and comforting weight, and then I would open the door. Without the core to act as a buffer, the neural link was a brutal, unfiltered connection. It was no longer a gentle immersion. It was a violent melding. I would choose a corrupted memory, a place where the static's poison was strongest, and I would pull him in with me. I had to be the guide, the anchor, the one who navigated the treacherous, shifting landscapes of my own fractured past. He, in turn, had to be my shield, a silent, processing firewall, his weakened but still formidable mind providing the raw, logical data I needed to combat the virus's lies. It was a grueling, agonizing process. We fought our way through the memory of my first hunt, where the static had twisted a story of youthful pride into a narrative of reckless failure. He, in his silent, steady presence, provided the objective facts, the precise angle of my shot, the wind speed, the creature's velocity. The data proved my shot had been perfect, that the animal's escape had been a freak accident, not a personal failing. The lie dissolved in the face of his irrefutable truth. We battled through the memory of my tribe's last great migration, a journey the elders remembered as a time of great hardship and loss. The static had amplified this, turning a difficult journey into an epic of pure despair. But Silas, even blind to the archive, still possessed its knowledge. He had walked this world for 1,000 years. He provided me with the geological and meteorological data of that time. He showed me that the hardships, while real, were followed by a season of unprecedented bounty. He showed me the part of the story my people had chosen to forget, the story of their own resilience, their own triumph. We were not just healing my memories, we were reclaiming the soul of our tribe, one stolen victory at a time. With each session, the toll it took on both of us was immense. I would emerge from the link, physically and emotionally, drained, my body trembling, my mind a raw, aching nerve. He, in turn, would suffer his own kind of damage. The direct, unfiltered feed of my chaotic, human emotions was like a corrosive agent to his logical mind. After each session, he would retreat into a long, silent period of defragmentation, his body perfectly still, the purple glow from his cowl dim and flickering, as he struggled to process the emotional chaos I had poured into him. His physical form, cut off from the archives, regenerative systems, was also beginning to show the strain. The fine, ceramic-like material of his skin was losing its luster, becoming dull and pitted. The intricate brass filigree on his chassis, which had once glowed with a soft, internal light, was now just a dark, tarnished metal. He was a dying star, and he was pouring the last of his light into me. "This is damaging you, Silas," I said after one particularly brutal session, my voice thick with concern. I had watched him flinch, a physical recoil, as we relived a memory of a childhood fear. He was not just observing my pain anymore, he was beginning to feel it. "The damage is a quantifiable and acceptable cost," his tinny-cum voice replied, but it sounded weaker, more strained. "The primary objective is the restoration of your mnemonic core. All other variables are secondary." He was sacrificing himself, piece by piece, for my sake. The realization was a new and terrible kind of heartbreak. I had come to this forest to take his heart, and now he was freely giving me his very life, one memory at a time. During our rest periods, a new, unspoken language developed between us. I was his eyes, his ears, his connection to the world he could no longer see. I would describe the cavern to him in minute detail, the patterns of the crystals on the walls, the slow drip of water from a distant stalactite, the subtle shifts in the air currents. I was painting a picture of his prison for him, with my words. He, in turn, became my historian, my teacher. He would draw on his 1,000 years of static memory, telling me stories of the world before, of the scientists who had built his forest, of the art and the music and the boundless, beautiful chaos of the civilization they had tried to preserve. He spoke of his creator, a woman of immense intellect and a profound, gentle sadness. He was painting a picture of a lost paradise for me with his memories. We were two halves of a whole, a blind god and his mortal eyes, trapped in the dark, building a new world for each other out of stories and silence. One cycle, as I described the way the light from my lamp caught a vein of quartz on the cavern wall, he reached out and took my hand. His touch was hesitant, a stark contrast to his usual, certain movements. "Kalen," his physical voice said, and the sound of my true name, spoken by the dead, synthetic voice, was a strange and intimate thing. "The data you provide, the descriptions, they are pleasing, more pleasing than the direct sensory input from the archives network." "How can that be?" I asked. "My words are imprecise. Your old senses were perfect." "Perfection is a sterile variable," he replied, his metallic thumb gently tracing a line on the back of my hand. "Your data is filtered through your own consciousness. It contains perspective, emotion. It is a flawed, but more complete, form of seeing." He was learning to see the world not through sensors, but through my heart. The thought was so profound, so impossibly tender, that it left me breathless. It was in that moment of quiet intimacy that my hunting senses, honed by a lifetime of survival, screamed a silent warning. A change in the air, pressure, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration in the rock beneath us. It was a sound so low it was felt more than heard. The sound of a ship's engines, descending. He had come back. My blood ran cold. "He's here," I whispered, scrambling to my feet. "Cain. He's back." Silas rose, his tall form a column of sudden, rigid tension. "Impossible," his voice stated. The phantom signal's trajectory was calculated to lead him to the planet's southern pole. The journey should have taken another 20 cycles. "He's not a fool, Silas," I said, my voice a low, urgent hiss as I grabbed my bow. He must have realized it was a decoy. The vibration grew stronger, a deep, bone-jarring hum that resonated through the cavern. He was not just in the atmosphere. He was close. He was scanning, hunting, his powerful sensors probing the very rock around us. "He cannot find us here," Silas stated, but for the first time I heard a note of uncertainty in his synthetic voice. "The cavern is shielded. He's not looking for an energy signature anymore," I said, my eyes wide with a terrible realization. I remembered the way Cain had crushed the crystalline flower. He was not a creature of subtlety. He's looking for the hollow space. The humming of the engines grew to a deafening roar. It was directly above us. He had found our tomb. Then came a new sound, a high-pitched, intense whine, the sound of a weapon charging on a massive scale, a seismic drill, a mining laser, a bunker buster. He was not going to try to open the door. He was going to make his own. The ceiling of the cavern, a kilometer of solid rock, began to glow with a terrifying, bright red heat. Dust and small pebbles rained down on us. The rock began to crack, the sound a sharp, tearing shriek that filled the air. Our sanctuary was about to become our tomb. The Peregrino moved, placing his own, failing, powerful body in front of mine, a shield against the inevitable. His tattered cloak billowed as the cavern began to shake violently. "It appears my calculation was flawed." His voice came over the cum, a whisper of pure, synthetic understatement in the face of our imminent, fiery death. "I'd say so," I yelled back over the roaring chaos. The ceiling gave a final, great groan, and a section of it, 20 meters wide, disintegrated, not into an explosion, but into a silent, perfect, molten rain. A shower of liquid rock through the gaping, glowing hole. I could see the dark, angular belly of the Xylos ship, hovering like a predator. A figure descended from the ship on a magnetic grapple line, landing silently in the center of our cavern. It was Cain. He stood there, his perfect, handsome face, an emotionless mask, his mismatched eyes taking in the scene. He looked at the kneeling, defiant huntress, and he looked at the tall, cloaked, and weakened machine standing protectively before her. Unit 734. Silas's voice boomed, his external vocalizer now at maximum volume, a challenge and a curse. Cain's head tilted, a cold, analytical gesture. "Obsolete designation," he replied, his own voice a smooth, synthesized baritone of chilling perfection. "You are the asset, the primary target." He then looked at me, his gaze so cold and dispassionate, it felt like I was being weighed and measured as a piece of equipment. "The girl is a secondary asset, an interesting, but ultimately disposable complication. Surrender the primary asset, and the secondary asset will be allowed to live." Cain's offer hung in the superheated air of the cavern, a cold, transactional piece of logic in a moment of pure chaos. Surrender the primary asset, and the secondary asset will be allowed to live. He was not a monster of rage or fury. He was something far more terrifying, a machine of absolute, dispassionate efficiency. Silas was a prize to be collected. I was a complication to be managed. Our lives were variables in his mission equation. My answer, Silas's voice boomed, his weakened body a defiant shield in front of me, is no. Cain's face did not register surprise or anger. His expression did not change at all. The logical outcome of your refusal is your deactivation and the termination of the secondary asset, he stated, as if discussing a minor logistical problem. This is an inefficient path. You have forgotten the teachings of our Creator, Silas countered, his voice a low, rumbling challenge. There are variables beyond simple efficiency, loyalty, sacrifice. Those are corrupted data points, Cain replied, and with a movement too fast for my human eyes to track, he drew a weapon. It was not a gun. It was a single, elegant blade of shimmering, black energy that hummed with a malevolent power. Corrupted data must be purged. He lunged. What followed was not a fight. It was a collision of two opposing philosophies. Silas, even in his weakened state, was a being of immense power, but his every movement was designed to protect, to shield, to parry. He was a guardian. Cain, on the other hand, was a weapon incarnate. His every strike was a perfect, precise, and lethal calculation aimed at a joint, a powered conduit, a structural weakness. He was an assassin. Sparks flew as Cain's energy blades scraped against Silas's onyx black metallic arms. The cavern floor became their arena, to gods of metal and code, locked in a deadly, silent ballet. I was a bystander, a terrified mortal watching a battle of titans. My bow was useless. To fire at Cain was to risk hitting Silas. I was helpless, a liability, just as Cain's cold logic had surmised. Silas was losing. He was too weak, his systems too degraded. He was a crumbling wall against a relentless tide. Cain was faster, stronger, his purpose pure and with a final, brutal strike, Cain's blade plunged deep into Silas's shoulder. Silas cried out, not a sound of pain, but a high-pitched, electronic screech of system failure. The purple glow from his cowl flickered and died. He staggered back, his tall form faltering, and collapsed to one knee. He was defeated. Cain stood over him, his energy blade humming, poised for the final, deactivating strike to the head. Your resistance was illogical, he stated, his voice a cold, flat epithet. In that moment, seeing Silas kneeling, broken, the being who had sacrificed everything for me, about to be erased, my hunter's mind went silent. The fear, the logic, the calculation, it all vanished, replaced by a single, burning, and utterly illogical, imperative rage. I screamed. A raw, primal sound of pure fury, and charged. Cain, his focus entirely on his fallen brother, did not register me as a threat until it was too late. I did not aim a weapon. I did not try to fight him. I threw myself at him, my arms wrapping around his sword arm, my entire body a sudden, unexpected dead weight. The action was so illogical, so suicidal, that his processors seemed to stutter for a split second. The surprise was my only advantage. My weight through his. Final, killing blow off balance. The energy blade missed Silas's head, and instead sliced through the air, carving a deep, molten gash in the rock floor beside him. Cain's reaction was instantaneous. He backhanded me, a simple, efficient, and dispassionate movement. The force of the blow was like being hit by a freight train. The world exploded in a starburst of white-hot pain, and I was thrown across the cavern, my body slamming into the far wall before crumpling to the ground, my bow clattering from my numb fingers. My vision swam, the taste of blood filling my mouth. Cain did not even glance at me. I was a neutralized distraction. He turned his attention back to the kneeling, helpless form of Silas, raising his blade once more. But my suicidal, illogical act had bought the one thing we needed: time. As I lay there, my world fading to a dark tunnel, I saw Silas move. He was not rising to fight. He was doing something else. He reached up with his one good hand and, with a slow, deliberate motion, he removed his mask. For 1,000 years, he had been a faceless god, a neutral vessel. Now, he was showing his true face. It was not a face of flesh or metal. It was a complex, beautiful, and terrifying latticework of pure, glowing, purply energy, a miniature galaxy of light and data. His raw, unshielded consciousness. Cain froze, his blade an inch from Silas's head. He stared at the exposed core, his perfect, handsome face for the first time showing an expression: confusion. "You wish to see the heart of the forest, brother," Silas's voice boomed, not from his vocalizer, but directly into the minds of everyone in the cavern, a wave of pure, powerful, telepathic data. Behold it, and he unleashed it. It was not an attack. It was a release. 1,000 years of stored memory, of preserved stories, of healed pain, of raw, unfiltered, and beautiful human emotion. It was the memory of his creator's final, tragic choice. It was the memory of my father's sacrifice. It was the echo of a mother's lullaby, a soldier's last words, a poet's joy, a lover's grief. It was the entire, messy, chaotic, and beautiful soul of the archive, and he poured all of it in a single, silent, overwhelming wave, directly into Cain's mind. Cain screamed, a raw, tortured, and shockingly human sound. His energy blade sputtered and died. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head, his body convulsing. His mismatched eyes, one human, one machine, were wide with the terror. That had no logic. He was a being of pure, sterile efficiency, a mind that had purged all corrupted data. And he had just been force-fed the entire, unvarnished, and overwhelmingly emotional history of the human race. The feedback loop was catastrophic. His systems crashed. He collapsed to the ground, motionless. The cavern was silent once more, the only sound my own ragged breathing. I pushed myself up, my body a chorus of agony. Silas, his core still exposed and glowing, knelt on the ground, his energy spent. Between them, on the floor, lay Cain, a broken god, drowned in the very emotions he had been built to destroy. I staggered over to Silas, collapsing to my knees beside him. Is he dead?" I whispered. "No," Silas's true voice whispered back in my mind, the sound weak, tired, but whole. "He is rebooting." The data was not a weapon. It was a cure. The same cure I offered you. He had not killed his brother. He had tried to heal him. He slowly, weakly, reached out with his long, onyx black fingers and gently touched my face, his touch a feather-light caress on the bruise that was already forming from Cain's blow. "You are hurt," he projected, his voice full of a new, profound, and deeply personal concern. "I'll live," I whispered, placing my own hand over his. We knelt there, in the heart of our broken sanctuary, to survivors surrounded by the wreckage of the past. The hunt was over. The battle was won. But as I looked at the unconscious, twitching form of Cain, and then, at the weakened, but whole, being beside me, I knew that our story, the story of the hunter, the physician, and the butcher, was far from over. It was just beginning.